On January 18th, parts of the internet went dead. Wikipedia and some 7,000 other websites around the country coordinated a one-day internet blackout to protest a bill called the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA for short. SOPA might have made companies like Wikipedia criminals for linking to other sites that might contain copyright infringing materials. The blackout worked. 3 days later, newspapers everywhere declared the bill had been killed. The Stop SOPA campaign recognized the ways that excessive intellectual property rights might actually jeopardize freedom. Today, I want to talk to you about another campaign that I think that we need. And this is a campaign to promote not only the value of free, but also the value of fair, share, and care. Now, in order for me to tell you why we need this campaign, I want to tell you 3 stories to convince you. And the first is the story of Solomon Linda, the man pictured on the left here. In the 1930s, Solomon Linda was the composer and lead singer of a musical group in South Africa called the Original Evening Birds. While he was living in a squalid Johannesburg hostel in 1939, Mr. Linda composed a haunting melody that recalled his childhood experiences growing up in the South African hinterlands, where he would spend his nights protecting cattle from lions in the jungle. The Original Evening Birds recorded the song, and it was called Mbube, which means lion in Zulu. The song went on to become Africa's first pop hit. Let's see if you can recognize it. Sound familiar? As you can expect, the song's fame began in Africa, but it did not end there. The record crossed the Atlantic and was reborn, first as Weemawe, and later as The Lion Sleeps Tonight. In fact, Linda's record would be recorded more than 170 times throughout most of the 20th century by numerous bands until it eventually found its way into Disney's immensely popular and profitable Lion King. What's been called the most famous melody ever to come out of Africa contributed to the wealth of many, especially the wealth of Americans, but not to its composer, Solomon Linda. He died at the age of 53 of a curable kidney disease with less than $25 in his pocket. When the story of Solomon Linda came to light later, Disney eventually settled for an undisclosed amount with Linda's children, who are pictured here. But that settlement, too, came too late for Linda's daughter Adelaide, who had died as recently as 2001 because she could not afford the antiretroviral medications that she needed to treat her AIDS illness. Another of Linda's daughters had died of malnutrition as a baby. Now, I share this story with you for 3 reasons. The first is that The Lion Sleeps Tonight illustrates well the value of free culture. Linda was able to freely mix the syncopation and styles of American jazz music of his time with the South African traditions to create a song that truly is timeless and globally compelling. But at the same time, his story also dramatically illustrates that free culture is not always a fair culture. In the real world, cultural exchanges often take place against sharp differences in power and knowledge. Third, the story also illustrates the relationship between intellectual property and other freedoms. In Linda's case, the failure to recognize him as the author of this song and to fairly remunerate him for his contribution to our global culture, in turn left him without the money that he needed, first to pay for medicines to save his own life, and later to pay for the medicines that would have saved some of his children. Now, some of you may say, yes, this is a tragic story, but it's an old one. Apartheid is no longer. So to that, I want to share with you a more recent story. This one also happens to involve the Lion King. When it premiered in 1994, The Lion King was billed as Disney's first original animated feature film. And that's in comparison to other works like The Jungle Book or The Little Mermaid, which were based on pre-existing works. But it turned out that this was not, in fact, quite the truth. In fact, there are striking similarities between The Lion King and an earlier animated work called Kimba the White Lion, created by the master Japanese animator Osamu Tezuka. Some of you might know Tezuka as the creator of Astro Boy. To begin with, the plots of the stories are the same. An African emperor lion dies early, leaving a cub. The son doubts his ability and responsibilities to lead the animal kingdom, but he eventually returns from exile and overthrows the evil lion who has usurped power in his absence. Now, if this is all that The Lion King took, there would be no problem. It would be just fine. Because under American copyright law, basic plot ideas are not protectable. Only the specific original expression of those ideas is protectable. But here, too, The Lion King falters. The names, of course, of the leading lion cubs are the same, Simba and Kimba. The evil lion in Kimba the White Lion is named Claw and is blind in one eye. The evil lion in The Lion King, as you know, is Scar, and he has a scar in one eye. But even more compelling is that every animal character in Kimba the White Lion has an analog in The Lion King. So a baboon in both works serves as the wise sage. The henchmen for the evil lion are hyenas, and the Lion King's advisor is a parrot. And there are numerous instances of nearly identical cinematic and artistic expression in the films, even to the point where both Simba and Kimba's fathers come to them as a vision in the moon. Now, what is the moral of these stories that I've told you? Well, one of them, I would suggest to you, ironically, isn't all that different from the moral in The Lion King itself. Intellectual property law should not be the law of the jungle. We don't want a free culture where the richest and the strongest take freely from those who are poor and weak. So where does that leave us? I want to go back to the campaign that I said we should be focusing on. We absolutely still need to focus on free. In order to make new culture, we need to be free to borrow from the culture that came before. In fact, in order to be free, we need to be able to talk back to the culture that surrounds us. At the same time, free cannot be our only value. We also need to understand the value of fair. We can't have global cultural exchanges that are not made on ethical terms. Sharing is important, not just because it's how we create, but because shared meaning is what binds us together. The beauty of The Lion Sleeps Tonight is that it's a song the whole world knows. At the same time, too, we also need to foster care for others. We need to care when patents make medicines for AIDS so expensive that millions in the developing world die each year because they can't afford to buy them. And we need to care when creators, and especially poor creators, make contributions to our shared culture but can't make a decent living from that work. And that brings me to the third and final story. Oxfam International, a group more famous for its work to fight hunger around the world, recently understood the connections that I'm talking about here with intellectual property by lending its support to Ethiopian coffee farmers in their struggle against Starbucks recently. The Ethiopian coffee farmers sought to own the trademark in their high-end coffees. Their coffees are considered the best in the world, often referred to as black gold. The Ethiopian farmers saw that if they could control the brand value, that millions of dollars could flow into Ethiopia to stave off famine, a real problem facing that country. Starbucks tried to stop them, but Oxfam, through a global campaign, was able to shame Starbucks into backing down. So those are the two campaigns that I want to offer you. Stop SOPA, a campaign for free and share, and Stop Starbucks, a campaign for fair and care. Let me leave you with this. As intellectual property activists, or soon to be intellectual property activists yourselves, think about intellectual property. And when you do, think about not just what this law does to either incentivize or stymie the creation of more goods. Think about law's potential to help people to live a good life. Thank you.